satisfied with my spot, I'ma take yours. No matter how many roadblocks in my way, I'ma break forward. Path I'm on is so damn narrow, I just stay forward. Put them on my plate, I'm never full, I just ate more. Put them on my plate, I'm never full, give me 8 more. Nigga, I don't sugarcoat shit, bitch, I'm straightforward. Don't give a fuck if they don't let me in, I just break doors. Falling so hard, they ask that I play for. Skimmer who? They ain't stop making guns where they made yours. Sick with it, feeling like I woke up with stage 4. Games loose, but they open up the cage for. Endure the pain, been through hard times is what I'm made for. Pay my dues. Never left a wage, I just rage war. Many chains and gold teeth, it's the blood slave. Sit on a throne with a gold crown from the blood of a slave. This is our world. Got it from the mud to the grave. Become a thing in the past. It's gonna be a story I'm paying.
Good kids all in high school. You was the man that's lost memory shit. Lost energy. Never lost my energy. Never lose control. Never losing. Dog, I plan to keep you. Lose your mind where I'm from. I ain't talking from what you sing. I never lost soul. Losing time. Wasting steady. Wasting you off track. I'm on. You pray to God, hoping he can save you. But the power of war, and that's a different angle. It's another lost cause, and I'm just adding to the list. They not seeing me for that reason. Got a flash on the grid. Nigga, big priest. They gon' judge me by my increase. And I'ma keep stepping in these joys to the increase. Just got off the phone with Jacob, and he said it's time to shine. Certified, blue dot, put it on you, now you verified. One West world, bigger than World War III. Do not sleep, it's not cheap, and it's still top 3.
So many chains and gold teeth, it's the blood of a slave. Sit on a throne with a gold crown from the blood of a slave. This is our world. Got it from the mud to the come a thing in the past. Gonna be a story in my page. Came on boats and then changed. So when I get rich, I'ma grab a boat and 10 chains, 12 ribs from each child. And each rib gonna have at least 3 kids. Yeah, I'ma have a deep squad and rap this and knee high. Now a nigga shack size. Spit that holy fire, when you hear it, you get baptized. One West world, yeah, you niggas know the logo. And I'ma bust it down so the haters see the glow glow. Let's have a feast, let's shine on our enemies. Right in their face, let's blind all our enemies. Cause now we have, but we come from not throw that cash on the ground, my nigga, let's cash lots. I started from the bottom, birthed out of mud, raised by a gangster, turned out a thug. I ain't give a fuck, burned out I was, from hitting licks in and out and selling nicks in the drum. So many chains and gold teeth, it's the blood of a slave. Sit on a throne with a gold crown from the blood of a slave. This is our world, got it from the mud to the grave. Become a thing in the past, gonna be a story in my page.
Shalom, Israel. This is the ISUPK. I'm the Commanding General. Started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, in 1969. This is the ISUPK Monday night Kentucky history class. I am priest and officer Zabak Yasharallah. And my topic tonight, I'm going to be talking about the history on farm breeding during slavery. You know, and it's a touchy topic, especially when you go in and, you know, the history and the exploitation of our peoples and how they mistreated us. I mean, it's sick. I mean, real sick. On the way they did us and things of that nature. I'm talking about even down to how it is today. Like, you know, I mean, even sex trafficking has come from that. And it's no getting out from up under that. And, you know, and I got like a real nice article to read on that. Yeah, and along with I'll be doing some scriptures along with breakdown on my topic on my class tonight. And after doing the research and history, this is crazy. The way these devils have done us, even down to their wives, the rape, the, it's, it's so much. It's like, I can't even discuss all of this in one class. I can't, but I'm gonna test some topics, and I don't know. I might do a part two. I might do a part. But this right here is like America's breeding farms. They say what history books never told you. In 1808, America banned the imports of slaves from Africa and the West Indies. The impact on actual slavery in America was almost non-existent. There was still some limited smuggling of slaves, but the majority of new slaves in America came from what Professor Eric Foner called natural increase. One could reasonably ask, why ban slave imports and not slavery itself? The answer is because for many of the proponents of the prohibition, including Thomas Jefferson, the reason was not based on humanitarian concerns, but on economics. And that makes sense because it was more of an economic gain for them, to have these breeding farms, because they were the one that was profiting for them. The more that they was having these breeding farms, and the more our peoples was, especially, well, the men and women, the more they produce, the more that these devils, they profited by selling the babies, and taking young females at the age that they could give birth to a child, and just having them just sleeping with this dude and just keep reproducing, all for economic gain. They say the South was producing and selling enough slaves internally that the slave trade was reducing prices for slaves and cutting into profits. In 1819, another act was passed allowing U.S. ships to not only patrol its own shores, but the coast of Africa, in an attempt to stop slave ships at the north, not for concerns about slavery, but in protectionism for American slave owners. Everything was contingent on the fact that there was a self-sustaining population of about 4 million slaves in America at the time. Southern legislators joined with Northern ones in passing both the acts that banned the external slave trade but ignored slavery. Yeah, because once you got the people low, you know that you can reproduce within itself just by having these breeding farms, and by you having more than one breeding farm. I mean, it was just sickening. So it's not like you went away with slavery. You were just making slavery more bit by keep reproducing, just keep reproducing. So the slave era, even within itself. Um, Most of us are aware that slave owners often bred their slaves to produce more workers. We are taught almost nothing about the breed farms, whose function was to produce as many slaves as possible for the sale and distribution throughout the South to meet their needs. Two of the largest breeding farms were located in Richmond, Virginia, and the Maryland Eastern Shore. As far as cities I never lived in, I spent as much time in Richmond, VA as anywhere. I traveled there multiple times a year, often for a few days or a week at a time. Richmond is serious about most of its history. I visit the Edgar Allan Poe Museum. Monument Avenue contains several statues, mostly of Civil War heroes. Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, J.E.B. Stuart, and Robert E. Lee are honored there, as is the late African-American tennis star Arthur Ashe, who was from Richmond. Black Israel. Come on. Salaka Israel. This page won't let me go any further. Uh, Forgive me, forgive me. And I had this story too. man, I don't know why it's doing this. Oh, forgive me, Israel. All right, all right. Salaki Israel. I had a story. I got a different story. I have a different story. I have a different story. All right. This is the original story. This is the original. This is the original article. Salaki. This is the original article. And this is going into talking about farm about breeding, about the truth about American slave breeding farms. It said by the 1820s, planters and will-be planters were moving in large numbers to places previously unavailable for settlement and growing the fiber for sale in Europe and New England, where a textile industry was beginning to thrive. The extension of the so-called cottoners as of 1808, when Congress ended the nation's participation in the international slave trade, planters could no longer import additional enslaved from Africa or the West Indies. The only practical way of increasing the number of slave laborers through new births. With so much at stake, black women's reproductive role became politically and economically decisive. If enslaved mothers did not bear sufficient number of children to take the place of aged and dying workers, the South could not continue as a slave society. Wow, that's crazy within itself. In this book and other sources, it would appear that America had little choice but to increase slave production to offset the altruistic end of the international slave trade, which Congress banned in 1808. Thomas Jefferson was president at the time. He had no problem with slavery. Like today's president don't have no problem with slavery. He literally loved his slaves. To free even Sally Hemings, who bore him 6 children, 4 of whom lived to be adults. Jefferson was a Virginia farmer who knew the value of slavery to the economy. Congress at the time was controlled by the party he created, the Democratic Republican Party, not to confuse with either the Democrats or Republicans of today. They didn't end the international slave trade to harm slavery, but domestic slavery in particular. Congress wanted to decrease the external supply to prices up for the homebred slaves. It's worth nothing that the Constitution of the United States Electoral College to protect slave states and at 3/5 of a person, and that's in the Constitution. Say so-called black Hispanic 3/5 of a man, which is like the equivalent to being a dog. 3/5 of a person them no rights, expressly forbade banning the importation of slavery before 1808. The mission of importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress before the year 1800, but a tax or duty may impose on such not exceeding $10 for each person. Americans did not take up breeding enslaved people or response to congressional action. The action was taken at the behest of slave breeders as a protectionist means to keep the price of their product up. Jefferson Home State, Virginia, was the leading producer of slaves. Slavery eventually exceeded tobacco as their leading export. Maryland was second in slave production, followed by several other states. Economist Richard Such did a study which found that in 1860 on farms which at least one female slave, the ratio of women to men was 2-to-1. In Virginia, enslaved women exceeded males by over 300,000. They were used for breeding. Robert Lumpkin ran what is mainly referred to as a slave jail, with little recognition that he ran the nation's largest breeding farm. He personally had 5 children with an enslaved person, Mary, who he ultimately remembered in his will. While owners of the breeding farms and plantations generally fornicated at will with their property, they also utilized select. They maintained their own lives and imported large male slaves to breed good field. Buck means the word buck when it was referring to so-called black men a slave at that time is somebody that was muscular, somebody that had like nice body build. They called them black female slaves were some of the first people in the country to receive free health care. Breeders took a great interest in fertility and expected multiple birth women. Or their value would be diminished. Home medical journals were produced to help with difficult deliveries previously left to the slaves to deal with. The quote from Gone with the Wind, "I don't know nothing about birthing babies," was meant to be a thing of the past. Many films had depicted boats arriving in New Orleans, which became the largest slave market in the antebellum South. Rarely is it shown those ships originated in Richmond and Baltimore. Slaves were also shipped by railroad, packed in boxcars, or sent by stagecoach. The slave breeding farms are mostly left out of the history books except for those that denied their existence. Many white enslavers felt they were doing their female slaves a favor when they mated with them, granting them a respite from the brutish black slaves they would otherwise be subjected to. Generally speaking, it was the house slaves that got raped the most. Some mothers had to protect their offspring from the master's wife if she had reason to believe her spouse was the father. We're generally aware of that situation, which we've been led to believe was the worst case scenario. Nobody talks about the 13-year-old girl on a breeding farm, forced to bear as many children as possible. And that's pathetic. And that ain't nothing but rape by no other name. Only to have them ripped away and sent down south to endure a lifetime of hardship without a mother. The mother will be freed on one breeding farm after birthing 15 children. What would she have to look forward to? America barely acknowledges the breeding farm existence, let alone document their role in creating the robust economy of the early South. Their self-evident truths are mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, and those truths are so heavy they must be covered up, denied. Breeding farms fall in the second category. History books, when they even mention it, suggest slave breedings didn't begin until the slave trade. In truth, it began decades earlier on plantations and farms, and because America was prepared to produce did it allow the end of importation of slaves from Africa. And with that said, how they did the farm breeding of slaves, they wrote down and documented everything. They documented everything. Ain't no different than how they do it today. How they do it today. The day, the month, the year that these babies were born. Gave them names. Just they went on to name cities and states after them, streets after them. They document everything that is of them. I mean, everything. And these devils use so many methods during slavery. I'm going to touch on some of the many things they would use as far as slave breeding. One of the methods was using the biggest slave males for reproduction. And the man's name was Pata Seca. It's spelled Pataseca. He was forced to have sex with women and fathered over like 200 kids. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg on the things that was going on. Now, set aside from them having farms, these slave masters, these devils went on to make kids with our sisters themselves. But I'm gonna touch on some of the that was taking place, that was part of the farm breeding. And one like whipping. Like, they would whip them. I'm talking about with whips, sticks, things that would instill. They would whip them in front of everybody. Fear. I mean, them to the point that blood was coming out the skin. I mean, just splitting the skin open. So don't forget about the hanging. Don't forget about they use certain flasks. And another one was, they would brand them like how they brand cattle. And all of this went on. All of this took place on these farm farm breedings. They had shackles and chains. I mean, heavy chains. Not just some chains that you can just move about. But this was a form of torture to whereas, it was weighing you down. Like, you really couldn't move. You had to be in submission. You had to just say, listen, it's nothing I can do. But to have somebody in slavery and then that you bestowed upon them, knowing that you already had them, knowing that they don't even know what's going on. The only thing they can go along with the harsh torture, with the torment. So it wouldn't do. It was nothing that they. It was nothing that they can do. They had to comply. If they didn't comply, they was getting beat. It was methods that devils would bestow on them if they didn't comply. Another one was labor. They force you to work from sun up to sundown. They force you to work from sun up to sundown, like 6 days a week. And the one day that you did, you had to go and hear a lie about how you do right by your master. When you die, you go to heaven. When they was in their heaven, you the thing on us. I mean, even to this day, oppression is still at an all-time high. Oppression is still at an all-time high by the hands of these devils. Another one was a lack of food and water. They only just gave you enough just to keep you alive. It wasn't that, they was gonna give you enough to give you strength to where that you could overpower them. Nah, they were just giving you enough to where you was getting out in this field and you was gonna keep breathing. You was gonna keep doing what the demise of these devils was doing. Another one was isolation. They was isolating you from your loved ones. They was isolating you from, and by them keeping you isolated, you could not stay in touch with what was going on. You could not be a part of what was going on with your loved ones. Even if somebody that you met and they saw that you was having a bond with them, no, I'm gonna isolate you from that so that I can get what I need to get out of you. I can make you adhere to what is going on. So when I keep oppressing you, you're just gonna stay down. I'm just gonna you from everything. Another one was verbal and psychological abuse. When it came down to that verbal and psychological abuse, when it came down on these breeding farms, the word motherfucker came from these breeding farms because they have our brothers go and sleep with their mothers. Literally, sleep with their mothers, sleep with their sisters. And this was like a form of entertainment. So now, knowing, and this was real humiliation. So now when you sleep with your mother, so now they can go and degrade you later on. So now by them having you sleeping with mother, so this was verbal abuse. This was like psychological warfare, because you know a male gonna have a close bond with his mother because she is like his first teacher. So to know that you gotta sleep with your mother and then knowing that you gonna be degraded later on, even if you didn't know, it still happened. It still happened. It still took place. It still took place. And that was like psychological. I mean, to know that this right here, like when I say our oppressor, so-called white man, is the devil the Bible speaks of. He is the devil. There's no way getting around it. And his wife is the she-devil. There's no way of getting around this. I mean, the hardship that they bestowed on you, the things that they have done. I mean, the rape and the murder. I mean, the things, these things are still going on. It is still going on. It is still going on to this day. Slavery is still going on. It is still going on to this day. It ain't nothing new under the sun. What has happened back then is still happening now. It is still happening now. It is still happening now. And it was even down to, they used to take the light-skinned woman, the light-skinned slave woman. This is where they get the word fancy girls from. They would take them, dress them up, take them even as young as like 8 years old. And they were sold they would ship most of them down to New Orleans for like prostitution and for like concubines. I mean, as young as 8 years old. And hey, even today, that is known as like sex trafficking. I mean, the things that we had to endure as people, even down to on these farm breeding farms. When the so-called left and he went on long trips, their wives would have sex with the male slaves. Can you imagine? Didn't sleep with this woman, you was gonna get beat when her husband returned. Can you imagine? The little young ones had to endure and had to go through that. Had to go, like, it's crazy. I mean, can you imagine our little young sisters being raped by these devils? I mean, like, and then our oppressor be talking about why they can't, like, and they think it's mockery when they say that, blacks get a Black History Month. Why we can't get history? Because when you talk about y'all history, look at what y'all history consists of. So y'all really want to go there? Y'all, listen, y'all history is so effed up and funny. There's no way that y'all want y'all history month. Cause y'all will ban that. You get that. Cause here in the ISUPK, the Commander General in Harlem, we have y'all history. Y'all don't want that. Y'all don't want. Y'all history is so far. Y'all history is so effed up till no. There's no coming back from that. It is no coming back from that. It is no coming back from that. That's why I look at our so-called brothers and sisters like, why do y'all want to partake in these people? Y'all, I mean, y'all want to be with these people. Y'all want to be with them. And don't even really do the research on these people. Because if you did the research on people, it's no way, once you find out the truth of how these people did us as a people, that you would still want to be involved with these people. But you know, when you don't know no better, you're not going to do better. You're not. When you don't know no better, you're not going to do better. You're not. That ain't no different than, it's nobody, let me say it like this. It's no man in his right mind going to hang out with a dude that is molesting little girls unless he's in agreement with what this guy's doing. It's no way. It's no way. There's no way that a female gonna hang out with. There's no way that some female's gonna hang out with another female and say she in her late 20s, early 30s, somewhere up in there, and she's sleeping with an 11-year-old, 12-year-old. There's no way, unless you're in agreement. So no. Once you know the history behind these devils, there's no way that you can want to partake in them. It's no way. It's no way that you want to involve yourself. I mean, y'all understand that you having like little light conversations, but you know, let that be. But as far as like, no, because when you do come to your senses, no, you will have to take your love from them. You will have to. You will have to. Stop giving your love to these people that do not love you, never had. They have always had a perpetual hatred. That's why they have done the things to us. Like the Most High said, there's no wicked. It never was, it never will be. But I'm going to start jumping into these scriptures. These devils raped our women. And these she devils also rape the men. Even down to these little boys. But in today's society, the Most High thinking that, no, Salaki, in today's black leaders, and when I say our so-called black leaders, I'm talking about our pastors, our preachers, etc. Knowing the Bible, forgot about our history, and did not do what the Most High said. Because if you call yourself a pastor, preacher, reverend, whoever, and y'all like to say in Christianity, you a man of the cloth, and if you know that a brother is dealing with a so-called white woman, and if you know that a sister is dealing with a so-called white man, this is the things that you're supposed to tell them. This is the thing that you are supposed to tell them. And when I say tell them, I mean, this is things that the Most High God said, especially if you so-called black, Hispanic, a Native American Indian, man or woman, is supposed to heed this warning and do what the Most High said. You look at Tobit chapter 4, verse 12 and 13. And this is where our black leaders failed us. This is where our black leaders have failed us. In knowing that you're supposed to tell them what the Most High have said. But y'all are out for y'all greedy, selfish gains. And you have our so-called black leaders have done performed weddings in churches. Have performed weddings in churches when it was a so-called black male standing beside one of them she devils. When it was one of our sisters standing beside one of these devils. But this is what the Most High God said. And the Most High God is talking to his people. He's talking to the so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American, man and woman. When you look at Tobit, chapter 5, beware of all whoredom, my son, and you take a wife of the seed of thy fathers. That will be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And take not a strange woman to wife. You know what that strange woman is? A white woman. African, Hindu, Japanese, Chinese. Who else? An Egyptian, Libyan, Canaanite. These are your strange women, which is not of thy father's tribe. For we are the children of the prophets, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember, my son, that our fathers from the beginning, even that they all married wives of their own kindred, and were blessed in their children, and their seed shall inherit the land. Verse 13, now therefore, my son, love thy brethren, and despise not in thy heart Salakia, and despise not in thy heart thy brethren, the sons and daughters of thy people, and not taking a wife of them. For in pride is destruction and much trouble, and in lewdness is decay and great want. For lewdness is the mother of famine. You ain't gonna have nothing dealing with these people. You ain't gonna have nothing dealing with these people. You're gonna lose out. And the Most High gonna see to it that you lose out. He gonna see to it. But I'm gonna touch on some more precepts to back up what I just read. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3 and 4. Neither shall thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Verse 4, but they will turn away the son from following me. And that's the same thing that happened to King Solomon. when he took on these other strange wives, that they may serve other gods. And these other gods, because y'all start doing Christmas, Thanksgiving, things of that nature. Start worshiping the sun god, going to church on Sunday. So of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. Yeah, because it's coming. Stay with them people. The Most High ain't gonna play with you. Now I'm gonna go to Ezra. Ezra chapter 9, 12. Now therefore, give not your daughters to their sons, neither take daughters unto your sons, nor seek their peace or their wealth forever, that ye may be strong and eat the good of the land and leave it for an inheritance, children forever. So the Most High saying, don't even bother them. Because like I like to say now, it ain't nothing better than an Israelite woman. Ain't no woman. Ain't no woman. Not on the face of this earth. Because you mess with one of them she-devils, that's in the bestiality. You was in the bestiality, dealing with them. And ain't no good gonna come. I'm gonna go to Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26, verse 19 through 20. My son, verse 19, the flower of thy sound, and give not thy strength to strangers. Talking about these strange women. Talking about these strange men. Verse 20, when thou hast gotten full possession through all the field, sow it with thy seed, trusting in the goodness of stock. When thou have got a fruitful possession, meaning a good woman, a righteous woman, of the seed of thy forefathers. Salaki. And trusting in the goodness of thy stock. Verse 21, so thy race which thou leavest shall be magnified, and having the count of their good descent. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong getting a woman that's an Israelite woman. And a woman can't get an Israelite man. You can't. You can't. That's why you have to leave these strange people alone. Too. You don't, the Most High gonna deal with them. I'm gonna go to the next one, Matthew chapter 5, verse 43. Ye have that it had been said, and this is in red, this is Christ talking. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. So to let you know who your enemy is, according to the words of the Most High, you look at Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. That's your enemy. We were sold unto our enemies. We were sold unto our enemies. I'm going to give you another precept. So that lets you know who your enemies is. So you know you're supposed to love your neighbor. The 12 tribes, love your neighbor. And don't go outside. Chapter 23, verse, thou shalt not seek their peace, nor their prosperity, all thy days ever. Because their peace, there's no peace with the wicked. Isaiah 48, verse 22. The Most High God said, there's no wicked, thus saith the Lord. So you seeking that peace, you seeking that prosperity, and the Most High say that day's forever. So it ain't no expiration date on forever. So you have to leave these people alone. You would have to leave them. Knowing, once you do the research and knowing what you know, but then goes back to Christianity, they'll tell you this here, everybody. So they want you to everybody. And then on top of that, what did it when fake Martin Luther King, he came along and talking about black boy and every little white girl should come together and hold hands. But I ain't meant that for us. He did not mean that for us. So I'm going to give you another precept. Isaiah chapter 13, verse 15. And this is what the Most High said. Dealing with these people, dealing with these strange people. Verse 15. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. But these bootleg preachers, they won't tell you this. They won't tell you this. And they will have their blood. Oh, they will have their blood on your hand, on their hands. They won't. But the Most High ain't playing. The Most High is not playing. Most High said, if you be joined unto these people, you're going to fall by the sword. And these slave masters, they have had a hatred in their hearts for God's chosen people. If they really were true Christians, which they say they are, which they say they are, according to what the Most High God said, dealing with his peoples as slaves, they would have done this. But they could have true Christians. If you know, when they came upon the seashores of America, they came talking about that they were Christians. But then when it came down to them taking us into slavery, if they would have done it, better understand it. But this was, you know, they have always had a perpetual in their heart towards God's chosen people. Colossians chapter 4, verse 1. Masters, give unto your servant that which is just and equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. Because see, according to the King James Version, the Most High tells a master how to deal with his servant. He gives instruction. He tells you how to a master to deal with his servant. But like I said, these devils, when they took us into slavery, they had a hidden agenda. They did everything under the sun unto us. Things that is unspeakable. They did everything that they could possibly do to us. But you know, ever since these devils took us into slavery, this was them. Ever since they took us into slavery. These were these devils. Hands down. Jeremiah chapter 22. 22:17. But thy eyes and thy heart are not but for thy covetousness, for their customs, and for to shed innocent blood, and for oppression, and for violence, to do it. And that's all they have been doing. That's all they have been doing ever since they brought us over here, shedding innocent blood, oppressing us, brought violence upon us. They still doing all of this. And that's why it makes sense now. Why the Most High has the Salaki. Why Christ has to come back. Because of Christ, these people are the cruelty of my peoples and the death that was bestowed on us. This is the recompensation from the Most High. Ezekiel chapter 35. Ezekiel chapter 35, verse 11 through 15. Therefore, saith the Lord God, I will even do according to thy anger, according to thine envy, which thou hast used out of hatred against them. And I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. Verse 12. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, and that I have heard all thy blasphemies, which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, they are laid desolate, they are giving us to consume. Verse 13. Thus with your mouth ye have boasted against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. Verse 14. Thus saith the Lord God, when the earth rejoices, I will make thee desolate, and that is coming. You shall be no more. Verse 15. As thou didst rejoice at the inheritance of the house of Israel, because it was desolate, so I do unto thee. Thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir, and all, even all of it, and they shall know that I am the Lord. So the Most High gonna do away with y'all. The Most High is going to do away with these so-called white people. He is going to do away with y'all devils. And there's no getting around that. It is no getting around that. There is no getting around that. And when it comes to slavery, some of these devils like to say that, especially the young ones. We didn't have nothing to do with that. I didn't have nothing to do with that. But you know what? This is to show you that even though that you didn't have nothing to do with it, you still going. Now, you really going to reap the benefits on this one. Lamentations chapter 5 and verse 7. Our fathers sinned and are not. Yes. Our fathers have sinned and are not too. And we have their iniquities. And here, the word born means carried. And iniquities is their sin. So even forefathers, when they sinned against the Most High, even though we wasn't begged to do what they had done, we have borne their iniquities. Just for them doing what they have done against the Most High. We had to suffer for that. We had to suffer. We had to suffer for that. So I'm going to go to Ecclesiasticus, the Apocrypha. Ecclesiasticus, chapter 41, verse 5 through 10. The children of sinners are abominable children, and they that are conversant in the dwelling of the ungodly. Verse 6, the inheritance of sinners' children shall perish, and their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach. Verse 7, the children will complain of an ungodly father, because they shall be reproached for sake. Yeah. Goes back to talk about Lamentations, chapter 5, verse 7. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquity. Verse 8, woe be unto you, ungodly men. And that word woe means destruction, death, which have forsaken the law of the Most High God. For if ye increase into your destruction. Verse 9, and on ye shall be born to a curse, and if ye die, a curse be your portion. Verse 10, all that are of the earth shall turn to the earth, so the ungodly shall go from a curse to destruction. So y'all have it coming. Y'all have it coming. And I hold on to the Most High words. So I'm going to get into this other precept. Job chapter 27. Verse 14. And if his children be multiplied, it is for the sword. And if his offspring, Salaki, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. No getting around that. That's future prophecy. That is future prophecy. So if his children be multiplied, it is for the sword. There's no getting around that. Hit you with this other one. Isaiah chapter 20. Salaki, Israel. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 20 and 21. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Verse 21. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers. I love the sound of that. I love the sound of that. That they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. Yes, it's no escaping that. It's no escaping that. This right here is future prophecy. What the Most High God has for you. It is no escaping that. But for the rape of these devils, she-devils, on God's chosen people during slavery, this is something I pray for. That the Most High execute this judgment. Psalms 109. Verse 12 through 15. Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any to favor his fatherless children. Verse 13. Let his posterity be cut off, and in the generation following, let their name be blotted out. 14. Let the iniquity of his father be remembered with the Lord, and let not the sin of his mother be blotted out. Verse 15. Let them be before the Lord continually, that he may cut off the memory of them from the earth. Yes, that's music to my ears. Cut off the memory. Have to. And Psalms chapter 41. Verse 6. Salakia. Psalms 41, verse 5. Mine enemies speak evil of me. When shall he die, and his name perish? I can't wait for me being the saint that I am. I'm going to have patience, because I know this is future prophecy, up and coming. But you know, like I said, the things that these devils and these she-devils have done to God's chosen people is unspeakable. But the Most High have y'all. The Most High is going to take care of y'all. He going to make it so that y'all be blotted out, that your whole nation be wiped out. You can't even come to of these other nations. We don't even have to worry about y'all no more. How they say in the Christian church, ain't God good? Yes. Yeah. He is also terrible too. He ain't gonna play with you. to the brothers, Yahweh Rakatham, and to the sisters, Yahweh Shamar, Elatham, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Class dismissed.